Good evening. I would like to thank Brad Leaves, CEO of Atlas Network, and my dear friend Roberto Salinas Leon for this opportunity. I am thrilled to share these minutes with you at the Liberty Forum and Freedom Dinner of the Atlas Network in New York. I want to convey the gratitude of the Venezuelan people to all those freedom lovers around the globe that have followed and supported this epic journey that has transformed our country in less than 2 years. I also want to tell you how proud I am to see my daughter with you. Ana Corina, as well as Ricardo and Enrique, her brothers, are part of a unique generation of Venezuelans that grew under a socialist criminal regime that forced millions to leave their country. Good, hardworking Venezuelans that desperately want to come back home to build a free, open, prosperous, bright nation. Venezuela is now in a pivotal moment, a turning point for generations of our countrymen, because ours is an existential struggle for life, for truth, for freedom. But let me be very clear, the outcome of this fight is decisive as well for the whole region, and especially for the United States of America. If Maduro stays by force and violence, extending this agony in a matter of months, 3, 4, 5 million Venezuelans would be leaving our country and heading north. Politically stabilizing the region, we'll see surge of drug trafficking through Venezuela and increased support for terrorist and extremist organizations. Even more penetration of organized criminal activities sponsored by Maduro's regime would take place in the U.S. territory. On the other hand, a peaceful, orderly transition to democracy would mean significantly reducing, in a matter of weeks, migration flows towards the U.S. and the voluntary return of 100,000 Venezuelan migrants. Second, that would mean dismantling the criminal networks that have found a safe haven in Venezuela, cutting dangerous relationships with Iran, Syria, Russia. It would also mean the fall, in a short time, of the Cuban and Nicaraguan dictatorships, and also an unstoppable process of growth and opportunities to create wealth as we open markets, build strong institutions, ensure the rule of law, and take advantage of our huge potential in a wide variety of sectors, including energy. In short, we will turn Venezuela from the criminal hub of the Americas to the energy hub of the Americas in less than 4 years. It is not a coincidence that this year's theme for this Atlas Network event is Empower. That's exactly what we Venezuelans have accomplished. We have empowered each other by our mutual trust and by our collective strength. We have understood that this process is a responsibility shared by all. In less than 2 years, we united a country, a nation that was hopeless and demobilized, stood back on her feet again. We demolished the barriers built by 25 years of Chavismo to divide us. We decided to trust each other and galvanize an unprecedented civic movement around common values, human dignity, justice, solidarity, freedom. But most of all, we united around a profound longing. We want our kids back home. This huge strength grew around a sentiment, one sentiment, the most powerful of all: love. Love for our families, for our country, and love for freedom. That's what drove us to the historic and resounding victory we achieved on July 28th. That's why, even facing today the most cruel wave of repression, we're more determined than ever to hold on and prevail. We count on you to amplify our message, to ensure that our truth is known, to give a voice to the victims, and to help us achieve our goal as soon as possible. Venezuela will be free. This fight is until the end.
Please welcome our special guest and Maria's daughter, Ana Corina Sosa.
Good morning, distinguished guests and members of the Atlas Network. I stand before you today as a Venezuelan to share a story of remarkable courage, determination, and love for freedom. You see, elections are not just about a political process. They embody the collective will of the people. They're our most powerful tool to shape our future, and they're the ultimate measure of society's commitment to freedom. This truth lies at the heart of Venezuelans' triumph on July 28th presidential elections. Despite intimidation and immense obstacles imposed by the regime, millions of Venezuelan citizens voted and delivered a decisive blow to the dictatorship of Nicolás Maduro, with 70% of the votes rejecting his oppressive rule. Now, this victory was not just in numbers. It was fueled by an unprecedented civic organization comprised of thousands of small communities that gather to defend the vote. And on top of that, were other thousands of poll workers spread out across the country to protect and defend the electoral process. The result? 83% of electoral tally sheets were safeguarded, retrieved, scanned, and published for the world to see. Just hours after polls closed, every single one of you in this room could go online, access this site, and be witness of the verdict delivered by Venezuelans. Here in my hand is one of those tally sheets, an undisputable evidence that Edmundo González Urrutia beat the dictator by a historic margin and stands today as our president-elect. But what unfolded after July 28th was a brutal and unrestrained campaign of terror. Every single Venezuelan who actively participated in the electoral process is today in political asylum, hiding, in exile, imprisoned, or dead. As is the case of Jesus Manuel Martínez Medina, a member of Vente Venezuela. Jesus was a poll worker on July 28th, and for this, he was abducted from his home the next day by the Bolivarian National Intelligence Service and thrown into a dungeon under inhumane conditions and being tortured. Jesus, who suffered from type 2 diabetes, was denied medical care and could not see his family. Just 6 days ago, his condition worsened when his injuries from the torture procedures got infected, and he was transferred to the hospital where doctors attempted to amputate both of his legs, and Jesus died in the process. Nicolás Maduro murdered a father, a son, a musician, a composer. He murdered a decent man, and his only crime was to defend the integrity of the vote and to safeguard this fundamental right for his fellow Venezuelans. His signature in this ballot sheet was his death sentence. Now, Jesus' story is a harsh reality for thousands of Venezuelans who have paid the ultimate price for their courage, for the simple act of voting. Our president-elect lives in exile in Spain, and my mother, María Corina Machado, has been in hiding over 3 months in Venezuela with constant threats on her life. Yet she's amongst the fortunate ones. I don't know where my mother is today or when I'll see her again. I don't know when I'll be back home in Venezuela. And I constantly get asked, is it worth it? Aren't you scared that they'll find her, imprison her, torture her, perhaps even kill her? Of course, I am scared. And yes, it is worth it. It is worth it because we're fighting for something far greater than ourselves, greater than our generation, and even greater than Venezuela. We're fighting for human dignity, the reunification of families, and the freedom of a nation. You see, what Maduro fails to realize is that in his campaign of terror, he has created something unshakable within us. He has cemented the will to survive, the will to live in freedom, and the unshakable resolve to reunite our families. I want to share the words of someone I deeply admire, my mother's advisor, Pedro Urruchurtu. He has been forced in political asylum in the Argentinian embassy for more than 8 months, along 5 other members of my mother's team. He said, "My freedom is not physical. It resides in the soul and the mind. These are the first places where we are free. And it is a freedom no one can take away from us, no matter what they do to us. That is why I'm convinced this is the right thing to do." The Venezuelan crisis is a universal cause because it stands for the integrity of liberal democracy and the sovereignty of nations. It is an ethical fight for truth, an existential fight for life, and a spiritual fight for freedom. What happens next is in our hands, and it will shape the future for generations to come. Stand with us, support our fight for freedom, and together, let's ensure a future where democracy prevails. Thank you.